Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey has been chasing a modern interpretation filled with diversity. Unfortunately, that doesn't include any Greek representation, nor does it involve the worldwide tour stopping in the birthplace of where the Odyssey takes place. It looks very much, yet again, like what Disney did with Snow White and the Dwarfs, where inclusion meant excluding, that's right, all dwarfs. Except in this case, say goodbye, no Greeks allowed in the Odyssey. Yes, an entire nation is furious with Christopher Nolan and with Hollyweird. And no, it's not America this time. It's the land of Greece. Greece is the word. Folks, you have the word and the power. Click the like button and let's dive into the absurd world of what Christopher Nolan and the modern message is doing to a tale from a land deserving of far more attention. Hollywood diversity hypocrisy. That's what they're saying about The Odyssey, Christopher Nolan's big Hollywood film that has no Greeks around and isn't going anywhere. Stinky old Greece. Now, hey, listen, Greece is the word, and I'm not trying to say a single bad thing about the land of Greece, but I'm just telling you how the Odyssey is treating it, and Christopher Nolan is taking serious heat from those who live in that place. The article says Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey press tour skips Greece despite adapting Greek mythology. Marvin Montanaro writing this one, and I just want to remind everybody, you got Lupita out there playing Helen of Troy. You got the artist formerly known as Paige, all 5 foot of that person, playing some sort of massive warrior. They have done everything they can for diversity's sake, except for, of course, actually honor the place that this is made from. Christopher Nolan's upcoming adaptation of The Odyssey is preparing to travel around the world ahead of release, but the global promotion tour appears to be missing one location many fans might have expected: Greece, where The Odyssey is. According to the announced schedule, the Odyssey press tour will make stops in several major international cities, including London, Paris, Mumbai, Beijing, New York, and Seoul. However, the country most directly connected to Homer's legendary epic is currently absent from the list. You see there. No Greece, no. Because guess what, folks? When it comes to inclusion, this is just like Snow White, and Greece is getting the dwarf treatment. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, remember that in Snow White, with Rachel Zegler, Disney was all about inclusion. And that meant they couldn't have dwarfs. They had to exclude them, go to CGI. And in this case, it looks like we're getting the same thing. Is there a single major actor in this film who has any kind of Greek heritage? Not that we know of. Is it going to visit the cities? Is it going to Athens? No, can't do that. Says the decision has attracted attention because it comes as Nolan's film is already facing questions from some Greek commentators and fans regarding representation, casting choices, and how Hollywood approaches stories rooted in specific cultural traditions. While press tour locations are typically determined by marketing strategies, international box office considerations, and scheduling logistics, some critics argue that excluding Greece from the promotional celebration of one of the country's most famous cultural exports highlights a larger controversy surrounding the film. It's all about, Greek heroes, but not about Greek actors. Get those away. Get those away. All right, boys, let's talk about this. We'll start off with...
Technically, Troy is in what is now Turkey.
Well, no turkeys.
One, so maybe there's other issues at stake as far as these national tours.
No turkeys made it in either. No gobbles. Okay, so let me go to Culture first. Culture, your thoughts on what we're seeing here in terms of just the lack of respect for the source material in every possible way.
I think it's unsurprising. I think we saw it coming a mile away. I think they hit an awful lot with the trailers and teasers that we saw. I think they sold this largely on, some hype early on, 70 millimeter IMAX and all the other things that come along with Nolan, the exemplary filmmaking that he usually does. And look, he has a few misses. Everybody does. Sometimes you miss a free throw. This one, he absolutely missed. His historical accuracy is absent, as well as his ability to adapt. His adaptation of Oppenheimer and some other things, much, much better. This is a poor facsimile, and it's represented not just in the casting, but also in the adaptation, again, primarily from Emily Wilson, who wrote the very feminist, radical feminist perspective, changing the language to something more modern. And he even admits recently that he was being perhaps a bit naive in releasing a modern language version of this film.
Which is to say, we're going to have like Travis Scott, with all kinds of, in modern slang.
Didn't he get in trouble for like, having people caught up in a stampede, riot kind of situation at a concert venue he was at?
I just think it's going to be interesting, if in the course of this film, they ride up on a boat and the bard comes up and says, "Yo, what up, my homies?" Like, I just think that's going to be an odd thing,
Well, I think
horse for sure.
I think the
Cyclops is irking me.
I think the rap music might take you out of it, but of course that's reportedly in the credits.
Could be. Lauren, they've gone all out, of course, for diversity's sake, and in the course of diversity, they've managed to exclude anybody and everybody who's actually, has a heritage to this, a claim to this. And I think that's on purpose. Of course, you can see the ratio that's happening here. We've got 4.2 thousand likes, 57,000 dislikes. We've never seen this go well. We've played this before. We'll play it again. Thank you to Stephanie, My Nerdy Home, for putting this out there. This is Lupita, who plays Helen of Troy. I don't think she's Greek. I could be wrong. But she plays Helen of Troy, and here's her thoughts on Homer and representation and how things should have been written 3,000 years ago.
I'd be like, so Homer, how do you feel about the screen time given to these women, considering how little you spent with them?
Oh.
Okay.
And then do you lean forward and look at him like that?
Yes, like, remember us?
Remember us, the Greeks? Lauren, what do you think about the screen time for people of Greek ancestry? 0, none.
Well, I've said before, I don't really care about the race stuff so much because we have British people playing Germans all the time.
Whoa. This is national. This is a national heritage thing, Lauren. It's not just ethnicity.
I understand. But my point is that the play, or the poem rather, is called The Odyssey from Odysseus. It is not called Helen. It is not called Penelope. It is not called Aphrodite. It's not called Calypso. All of those women have roles in the story. Some of them have major roles. Helen is not one of them. Helen is a minor character in the poem. And I think if you wanted to tell a story from that perspective, you could do so, but then call it Helen. Or call it Christopher Nolan's Odyssey, or even better, Christopher Nolan's Emily Wilson's Odyssey. Don't call it the Odyssey. I would also say I think Spencer Clavin had the best take on this. He lists out all of the many females who are major characters in this story, and they do play a very important part. And one of the most important parts of the story is that Odysseus labors for many, many years to get back home for the love of his wife, Penelope, even though a goddess is practically throwing herself at him. And part of that is because Penelope is his match and has successfully kept all of her suitors at arm's length through a rather clever stratagem. That is part of why he loves her. I don't know how you could say that this is not a feminist piece in its own sense.
So here's another thing to think about, guys. And I agree with you, Lauren, 100%. I'm fully on board with you. But Hollywood is so interested in being, quote unquote, diverse, right? They're so interested in being diverse. And yet it's to the exclusion so often of the people that, actually are attached to the source material in any sort of way. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is one of those examples. And I think this backlash is well-deserved. I think, if this doesn't do well in Europe because people say, wait a minute, hold on a second, this is our story, especially around the Mediterranean. If it doesn't do well there, I honestly think that's it's apropos for the moment. Guys, I'll give you the final thoughts on this, but no appearance in Greece. And kudos, by the way, to Moana, which is going to be terrible at the box office. And people say, well, what does that have to do with anything? At least Moana, and it's not good for them financially. It doesn't move the needle at all. At least the Disney company said in this giant world tour of taking Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Aliki Carvalho and the new girl who plays Moana, we're going to stop in Hawaii for a day. At least they did that. You would have thought Universal could have done it with Greece. But
No, they had a hotel to sell, though.
That's actually a really good point. Disney, of course, with a hotel to sell. Culture, I'll give you the final thoughts on in general, this practice of Hollywood saying they're inclusive and they exclude in order to include.
I think that's the very definition of woke, ESG, and many of the other issues we've been fighting with in our culture for the last 5 to 10 years. And I think it's probably the most adversarial position Hollywood could possibly take. And I think that they will continue to stunt cast or otherwise, go outside the bounds to, include absolutely nonsensical choices in everything they do going forward. Because again, maybe it's not about money. Maybe it's just about power.
There's one last thing, and I know I said last word and last, but
That's fine.
I do want to say, when it comes to the ratios they're experiencing, we have never seen any movie overcome that. It's never happened. So if this does do well at the box office, and it won't be based on that first weekend, we know that'll be big. But after that, if this does do remarkably well, it will fly in the face of everything we've ever seen, where when the negative ratios are landing on trailers, it portends total disaster. And I think they know that. I think they've earned that with the Odyssey. Well, you've made it to the end of the video, and that means you are a true pal of Pro. Thank you so much for watching the entire thing, ladies and gentlemen. And we ask that you consider clicking that like button. Drop a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts. And remember, folks, we've got more content yet on the way. The drive-bys can't handle what we have to say, but we never stop, not for a minute, because we want to win it for you. Until the next time, keep learning, keep growing, and as always, keep having fun.